So you might not have heard of Franciacorta, but if you love fine sparkling wine, then you need to remember this name, and especially if you like your fizz dry and your drinks organic. I'm Patrick Schmitt, Editor-in-Chief at The Drinks Business, and I'm going to tell you about Franciacorta. Now, firstly, you may be wondering, what is Franciacorta? Well, it's an area of sparkling wine production in northern Italy, not far from Milan, within the region of Lombardy. Made like champagne, Franciacorta is a bottled fermented fizz, which means that the bubbles, which come from carbon dioxide produced during fermentation, are formed within the bottle you buy and not in a tank, which is the case for Prosecco, Italy's much larger, more famous and generally cheaper sparkling wine. Franciacorta's approach to winemaking gives the product a fine and persistent fizz and a bready taste, like its famous French cousin, champagne. But Franciacorta is different from champagne in most other ways. For a start, Franciacorta's production is much smaller, with around 122 producers creating a total of just over 20 million bottles of fizz annually. That's around 16 times less than champagne, which churns out more than 320 million bottles each year. Franciacorta is much younger than champagne too. In 1995, the Italian region gained its protected status as a strictly controlled sparkling wine denomination, known as a DOCG, while the champagne appellation was officially recognised in 1936. And the laws for aging are stricter in Franciacorta, with bottles of base-level non-vintage Franciacorta required to rest in the producer's cellars prior to disgorgement and corking for at least 18 months, compared with 15 months in champagne. But stricter rules, a shorter history, and a smaller production figure don't necessarily ensure that Franciacorta is a product with a different taste to champagne. And if there's something appealing about Franciacorta, it's the unique personality of its wines, which also have a high and consistent base level of quality. In essence, Franciacorta is softer and fruitier than champagne, and sometimes more floral too, but also drier. The reasons for this are myriad, and start with the terroir. This is a Mediterranean climate, cooled in the summer by alpine air that's funneled along the Camonica Valley, home to the river Oglio, which feeds Lake Iseo, Franciacorta's northern boundary. Such conditions ensure that the grapes are ripe, but never excessively so, while the soils of the region, mostly glacial moraines on top of a limestone substrate, mean that the vines are rooted into a mineral-rich base, which the producers claim gives the wines a salty, refreshing tang. Then there are the grapes, influenced by the French Benedictine monks from Cluny, who brought with them Burgundian varieties when settling in this part of Italy from the 11th century onwards. Franciacorta is a land of mostly Chardonnay, which accounts for 80% of plantings, backed up by 15% Pinot Noir and 5% Pinot Blanc. There's also a tiny amount of a newly authorised but ancient variety called Herbamat, which, since 2019, is allowed in a Franciacorta blend up to a maximum of 10%. But it's the prevalence of fine, pure Chardonnay Franciacorta that accounts for a delicious and distinctive side to the region, along with Blanc de Blanc that comprise Pinot Blanc, which brings added freshness and a floral character to the wines, although producers can't use more than 50% in a cuvée. And not only is Franciacorta well positioned to produce plenty of first-rate Blanc de Blancs, with or without the addition of Pinot Blanc, or indeed Herbamat, but it also has a unique offering in the DOCG rules. Satin, meaning silk, is a Blanc de Blanc with a minimum of 24 months lees aging and a maximum pressure of 5 bars. That's compared with 6 for the standard brut. The latter stricture is important as the lower pressure ensures there's a finer, less aggressive fizz, hence its name, which references the sparkling's silky texture. Sugar levels are another defining feature of Franciacorta, generally lower than champagne, so on average around 5 grams per litre compared to 9 for champagne. The ripe grapes from the sun-drenched and relatively low-yielding vineyards mean that Franciacorta works with soft and fruity-based wines, the sort that lend themselves not only to dry fizz, but sugarless cuvées too. Indeed, Franciacorta is becoming an expert in zero-dosage fizz, with an increasing number of unsweetened bottlings coming onto the market. Now, as someone who likes a standard dosage of around 9 grams per litre in champagne, I was surprised to find myself favouring the brut natures of Franciacorta, the ripe yellow fruit and creamy texture of the wines suiting a bone-dry state. Complementing this purity, and perhaps augmenting the balanced ripe fruit character, is another important facet of Franciacorta. 2/3 of the region's grapes are grown organically. Now that's huge and greater than any other major bounded wine region. And much of Franciacorta is also sustainably produced, with lots of small winemaking estates dotted around the beautiful countryside of Lombardy. It's not unusual to find that operations are solar powered while landscapes are cultivated to maximise biodiversity. So, not only is Franciacorta focused on long lees-aged, bottle-fermented fizz with ripe fruit and creamy textured bubbles, but it's also dedicated to sugar-free cuvées made from organically grown grapes in sustainably run wineries. In other words, if you're looking for something fizzy with great eco-credentials and a distinctive flavour based on ripe fruit and low sugar levels, then head for Franciacorta. Salute.